This episode is a little bit different. I am being interviewed in this particular episode by Chris Denmon. He is a family law attorney based in the Tampa, Florida area, and his law firm is called Denmon Pearlman Trial Lawyers. As I said, near Tampa, they have a cool website. It's Denmon, DENMON.lawyer. So if you type in your browser, denmon.lawyer, you'll show up on their website. And I encourage you to check them out. If you are in the Tampa area, they have very, very good reviews, and their clients seem to like them a lot. And in this episode, Chris interviews me on some of the most pressing financial topics that his clients face on a regular basis. And so I hope you enjoy a little bit of a different episode, but definitely well worth listening. We cover quite a few topics for you in this one, and please give it a listen.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Denmon with Denmon and Pearlman out of St. Petersburg, Florida. And today I'm with Shawn Leamon. Did I pronounce that right, Shawn?
You got it right.
All right. Shawn Leamon, who is a certified divorce financial analyst, and he's a host of a podcast, which is Divorce and Your Money, which is how I found Shawn. We're continuing our series today. We're interviewing people professionals, tangential professionals. I'm a divorce attorney, but other professionals that can help our clients get through the divorce process in the best possible way and help them move on to their life in the best possible way. And so, Shawn, you'll be talking to some of my future clients and my current clients. Take it away. What did I miss? What else about you should we let people know?
No, I think that's great. I mean, I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. I get to work with people all over the country. My podcast, Divorce and Your Money, is probably the largest divorce podcast that's out there.
Absolutely. Same idea, right? So when I'm a lawyer and I do lawyer things, and my clients who are going through the process, they'll come to me, whether it's for figuring out a budgeting issue or whether it's a tax issue. And I am not an expert at that. That's not what I know best. And I turn to people like you to help me answer those questions. And a lot of times it's easier for me to just introduce my client to somebody like you or to you, because then you can help them get the answers they need better than I could do it. And you and I were talking before we started. I know you from your podcast. I also know you because I was looking up an answer to something that here I am, the divorce attorney. I didn't know the answer. And you had answered it on a very detailed, excellent blog post that I was able to get the answer for me and then share it with my client. And you're able to help that way. So thank you for taking some time to chat with me today. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
With my clients, I have two different phases where I think they need help. And I'm going to kind of just mention that and let you kind of help educate in any way you can. But I know that I have clients that right at the very beginning of the process, in anticipation of a divorce or in anticipation really of a separation where they have one household and they're getting ready to potentially move into two households, and they have to figure out how to budget for it, plan for it, and make the right decisions with their finances. That's kind of one bucket where my clients need help. And then the other bucket is when it's all said and done. As a divorce lawyer, I think we're good at getting things done. And then we shake hands and then we release our clients into the wild, right? And sometimes we have clients like, maybe a needy spouse who for the last 20 years, she hasn't really done any of the budgeting. And I don't want to leave them. I don't want to shake hands and let them go off and have them ill prepared. And that's another, that's an area where I think that they need help. Is that kind of your experience?
Yeah. I think the main focus for anyone who's thinking about divorce or already in the process really boils down almost to two things. The first is knowing what you have. The number of conversations where people don't know they have a retirement account, or, if you have a house, you need to know what it's worth and have a good sense of that. If you have a mortgage or if you have other debt somewhere, if you have credit cards, regardless of whether you were the spouse who took care of the finances or has never seen them at all, your first step is just to figure out, well, what are we splitting up? And from that comes the second question, which is, or second answer that one should know the answer to is, what do you want? The other problem or other area I see every day is that, you have a house that's worth a certain amount, you have these retirement accounts, you have maybe a little credit card debt or whatever the case may be, but you don't really have a clear sense of, well, what do I want when this process is over? What do I, what will I need to live? Most of the people, at least that I deal with getting divorced, I like to say, look, you're going to probably die these days at 100 years old. So if you're 50, you've got 50 years of thinking and planning to do. What are you going to be thinking about over the next 2 or 3 or 5 decades? And are the decisions that you're making right now, splitting up your family and your assets and everything else, are these really kind of what you want for the long term, and are they workable for you? And so, the divorce process for most people, as painful as it is for most, is really only going to be a year or two of their life. And then, as I said earlier, is you have decades to think about. Well, let's start with, what is your life going to cost after this divorce? What is your mortgage payment or rent going to be? How much, are you spending on cars and telephone bills and everything else? Once you know what your expenses are, then you can start to say, well, all right, now I know at least how much income I need to stay even. And then you can start thinking about bigger questions like, how much am I going to need for retirement or whatever else? But if you start with your expenses, things like that house that you have an emotional attachment to, you can see very quickly and very clearly that in many cases, it's not affordable. And you'll see like, wow, if you're spending, I'm just going to make up a number, but if you're spending $3,500 a month on a house and your income for a given year after divorce is only going to be $5,000 a month, it becomes very apparent that you don't have much money for anything else. And once you just kind of map out, and when I say map out, I do things very simply. I take a blank sheet of paper and a pen, and I say, let's just do some simple math. How much is the house? How much is the car? How much are you spending on kids, clothes, going out, travel, vacations, whatever? I just take a pen and paper, nothing fancy, and just start writing down these kinds of things. And then once you have that kind of rough number, it doesn't have to be precise. You can start to think about is, well, what does that really look like for me? And start making the right decisions based upon that.
Right. That's a great way to do it, because I think a lot about the stay-at-home mom. We represent a lot of stay-at-home moms, and their responsibilities for the family have traditionally been kid-related stuff. Maybe the stay-at-home mom hasn't traditionally had dollars and cents responsibilities. I mean, they'll go out there and they'll do the work, and they'll go do the shopping and all that stuff, but they may not be doing the budget. And then it comes time they have to now figure all of this out. And they also have the great unknown of what their income is going to be when this is all said and done. And, alimony will often play a big part in that. But if you don't know what your expenses are, how are you going to know what is the money that you need outside of just saying, well, get me the most amount of money possible, which is great, but it's not really a great way to solve the problem. You just got to know what you need and then try to get that and maybe some more. And I like your idea of just putting pen to paper with it, because sometimes as lawyers, we'll do things that becomes a little bit cumbersome, spreadsheets, and it doesn't really work. Sometimes simpler is better to help people, especially with so much else that's going on in a divorce. So many other things to worry about,
There's a lot to say about that point, particularly with stay-at-home moms. I also work with many, and there's a variety of issues oftentimes with the stay-at-home moms. Sometimes a lack of confidence. I said you have to be the CEO of your divorce process. I'll always say, because I talk to stay-at-home moms every day, everywhere, and I'll say, hey, so while your husband was working, who took care of the kids? Who took care of the house? Who took care of every other daily detail that happened? And it was always them. And they have all of these skills in terms of managing a very complex life. They might not feel like they do, but they've been doing it for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And this is just one other, challenge in that process, but they already have everything they need. They just need a little bit of guidance in terms of focusing that same energy they've had for a very, very long time. And, when I think about things that you need to do when it comes for planning for the process, well, one big question is, we talked about the house. Sometimes I'll say, well, let's take some action towards it and find out. If you want to stay in the same neighborhood, why don't you contact a real estate agent? See what houses are available in your neighborhood, particularly if your kids need to stay in the same school district. I'll say, go check out some apartments in the area. Are any of them feasible? Find out what the rent is for something that you could live with. It might not be the same, but sometimes just gathering some basic information that's free. no cost to anyone to call up a realtor and say, hey, I'm about to get divorced, or I'm in the divorce process. Can you show me what some options are in the neighborhood? Or walking to the apartment building or driving over to the apartment building and say, hey, what's a 3-bedroom in this area cost? And those types of little steps, not very hard. And you can also start to crystallize, and you can say like, hey, you know what? This 3-bedroom apartment actually could really work for me for the next few years while I get back on my feet. Or you might say, you know what? I'm priced out of my neighborhood. I need to think about what the right option is for me in the long term. And it gives you the ability to confront reality head on, good or bad, or anywhere in between. But at least you come through, or you start the process with some solid information so you can make the right decision when it comes to, going to mediation or talking with you or whatever else. It's just you have a real clear picture of what the future might look like instead of just guessing and hoping for the best.
A little bit of information goes a long way on the path. So that's a great idea. And do you find yourself encouraging people to do that early in the process, in the middle of the process, when?
Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is as soon as you can. Divorce is challenging, of course, to understate it. And, it's not an instantaneous process even to get to the point where the D word gets dropped, much less serving papers and everything else. So it really depends. What I say is the sooner you can figure these things out, the better. But I have people who, and I actually am talking to someone in just a few minutes, who has their settlement proposals on the table, right? And so the question is, well, does this make sense, or should I be trying to make some adjustments? And some of the things we've already discussed are going to be exactly that. It's like, hey, did you check to make sure that you're going to be able to afford the house, or be able to move to another place, or be able to refinance, or whatever the case may, or your spouse be able to refinance if you go with this proposal. And if not, we got to get these kind of details done now so we make sure we're not locking you into something that is not ideal for you. The sooner you can plan, the better. For the people I get to work with before even papers are filed, I'll say, this is awesome. You're going to go into your consultation with an attorney with almost everything prepared, and your attorney is going to be able to take this job and do everything for you, and I won't need to talk to you again. Other people, if you're kind of still in the middle of the process figuring things out, it's okay if you're in the middle, so long as you're starting to formulate that picture of what it really is that you're aiming for. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that if you don't have a goal, you're not shooting towards anything. And you really need to have a clear sense of what your goal is for this process. Otherwise, your attorney, you aren't as empowered as you could be to help them get to where they need to be when this process is over.
And again, as an attorney, we're goal oriented. We have a process from the very beginning of getting them to conceptualize our clients and focus on their goals. But it can be easy to focus on goals that are more related to the divorce process and maybe kids. And sometimes, for however it works out, because maybe our clients, when they're coming in, some of the issues we're addressing at the beginning are more emotional. Sometimes the financial goals outside of, minimize my alimony payment or maximize my alimony award, which isn't very concrete and isn't very helpful. But outside of some of that stuff, we tend to maybe miss some of those financial goals from the very beginning. Whereas if we have them nailed from the very beginning, it makes it easier to get people to where we need to get them to.
That's exactly right. And, the only other thing I'd add to that is also, if you have the goals, I say this all the time, is once you have your goals written down, now's a great time to talk to your attorney and make sure your goals are reasonable. Right? Because I see people who might say, I don't want to pay a dime of alimony and no child support, and I want 100% custody. Like, your spouse is a decent human, even though the two of you don't get along. That doesn't seem like a reasonable case. You might want to think about those a little bit more, but it's having a kind of a sense of what that is. So I view my job as to make them prepared for you, and so that whatever time you spend with a client is maximized, and you can do your job more effectively. You, as the attorney and as the people listening, are the people in charge of this process. And, I'm a sort of support person, but, I want to make sure that what you're doing and what I'm doing can kind of help them get to the best position possible.
Absolutely. Before we go, Shawn, do you have any Like any tips to help somebody, whether it's the husband or the wife, when they're in the beginning of the process, maybe they've contacted me, maybe they haven't, and they're considering separation. And so, from a financial perspective, do you have any tips to help somebody who's thinking, hey, I think I need to get, I think for my own emotional well being, I think I need to be in a separate household from my spouse? Obviously, I'll talk to a lawyer about things like custody and stuff like that. But what do I need to pull off from a financial perspective? And how do I get there?
I think the two things when it comes to separation, some of the things we've already discussed, but one is your credit report. Knowing what's on your credit report. I have clients who make $100,000 a year. I have clients who make $100 million a year. You'd be surprised what's on a credit report. And there are always surprises. And so just kind of knowing what that is. And then also knowing what your expenses are. When you're separating, we've talked about expenses before, but your income is going to be the same, more or less, whether you're married or in the separation process. The income part is semi-fixed. The expenses part is now all of a sudden, doubling. And so you need to really understand is, can you afford that? And what that looks like. Do you have enough savings? Do you have enough income? Do you have enough, whatever the case may be, that you need to separate? And I actually might add a third thing to that is separation can have other effects on the divorce process. And so I always encourage my clients before taking that separation step to talk to someone like you. Consultations are confidential. It's not like, I have some clients who are afraid to step into an attorney's office. I say, look, attorneys are confidential. No one's going to know that you're there. No one's going to put a billboard up in town that says they met with Christian. It's just so that you can understand your situation, the implications of what you're doing, and making sure that you ultimately protect yourself and don't unintentionally run afoul of something that may come back to hurt you later.
Absolutely. That's right. So I can help them with the legal pros and cons of separating, but you can help them with the practical. If you separate, can you do it, and how will we make it work, and what's it going to cost? Shawn, thanks so much, man. I've had a great time. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with me and ultimately chat with my clients and some people that are watching this just for advice. If somebody needs to reach out to you, what do they do? How do they do that?
Yeah, you can visit me at divorceandyourmoney.com. And there's a podcast by the same name if you search any podcast player called Divorce and Your Money.
Sounds pretty simple. Shawn, thanks so much. I appreciate
it. Hey, thank you, Christian. Take care. Before you go, I want to make sure that you have some awesome resources that are sure to help you during the divorce process. You can find them all at divorceandyourmoney.com. The first thing is you can book a one-on-one coaching call directly with me. All you do is click on the coaching page or go to divorceandyourmoney.com/coaching, and you will have direct access to my calendar to book a time. And during the coaching calls, they're 30 minutes long, and we can discuss whatever is most pressing to you. Sometimes people call and say, am I making the right decisions during this process? They'll say, is my attorney doing a good job? Can I get a second opinion from you? Sometimes someone will say, well, is this what I should be asking for during the negotiations? Or one of my favorite things to do is come up with some creative solutions to splitting assets that you might not have thought about. Sometimes you'll say, well, does this settlement that I'm looking at that's on the table make sense for me, for my kids, for my future? Does it make sense for the long term? Or are there other issues that I'm just not thinking about that I should be as part of the divorce process? You can book those calls with me. We'll speak directly. They're very affordable, and we get into the issues that matter most to you. I look forward to speaking with you there. That's divorceandyourmoney.com/coaching. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is the store, where I have lots of excellent resources to help you. My favorite resource of all of them is the podcast archives. Now, only a few of the episodes are available for anyone to download. But in the archives, you can get almost 200 episodes of the Divorce and Your Money podcast. And what's great about it is that the episodes are organized into easy to understand topics. So if you just have questions about your house, there is a great section of several episodes, 7 or 8 episodes, for just on things about the house. Or if you have questions about post-divorce finances, things that you should be planning for, how to choose a financial advisor, that's in there too. If you want to have a section just on how to manage and have the best relationship possible with your divorce attorney, we have a section on that there. Or any number of things in the divorce process. There are many hours of information, and I've never had to give a refund on it because it is perhaps the most useful resource worth many, many thousands of dollars that I give to you for a very low price. So you can check that there in the store. DivorceandYourMoney.com is where you can get anything, get access to me, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.